So we have just started renovating this small loft space. And while I'm waiting for my flooring to arrive, I'm going to take advantage of my time and tackle a few of the details that I don't really like up here. One of them being this little access door to my attic, and I don't really know what I'm going to do here, so I guess we'll figure that one out. First things first is I got to remove the old trim and take out this existing door. So on another project up here, I'm currently making all the windows trimless. And I want to do the same thing here with this opening. So once I've cleaned up the drywall around it, I can attach this corner bead that I got all the way around, nice and level, nice and plumb with some drywall mud, and then feather that out so we got a nice clean opening. And then meanwhile, while all that's happening, I can head on into the shop and make a start on the door. Yep. So to kick things off on this door build, I'm gonna first make a start on the door frame. And you can usually buy stock door frame material straight off of the shelf, but unfortunately I can't seem to get any in white oak, so I'm gonna make my own. And now with my frame material all milled up, I can now head on upstairs and take a measurement of my opening and then cut my header and my sill to those measurements. So before I go ahead and cut my jambs, my side pieces to length, I gotta go ahead and cut a rabbet in all of the pieces in the frame. And this is basically a integrated doorstop, but it also acts as a bit of a groove for me to add a sealer in. So that way I can keep the heat in, but the drafts out. So I went ahead and cut a rabbet either end of my sill and my header to create a nice little seat for my vertical pieces, my jambs, to kind of lock into when I glue the whole thing together. And it just looks a lot neater as well. So next, I gotta cut my jambs to length. Cut a small groove all the way around for the weather seal to lock into. So now with all that done, I can go ahead and give it all a quick sand and then get this thing glued together. And now that the frame is drying, I can go ahead and make a start on the door. Yep. So majority of the door is going to be made out of a sheet of white oak veneered MDF. And I've used this a lot on this channel, but if you're new here, it's essentially just a sheet of MDF with a real thin layer of white oak on the top and the bottom. So next, I rough cut the MDF to my door opening. So the door is very tight in the frame, and I did that intentionally because on my table saw, I'm going to remove 3/8 of an inch all the way around the door. And you'll notice at the edge of the door, you can still see the MDF core, which is obviously a no-go. Usually I'll end up sticking a thin strip of solid material on the edge to act as an edge banding. And as this is a door, it's going to be hinged to the frame. It's going to have to hold some weight, so this little thin strip of wood probably isn't going to cut it. So I'm going to have to up my edge banding game. So with all that in mind, I'm going to do a tongue and groove edge banding like this one. Ultimately, it gives you more surface area for the glue, which is going to make the joint a lot stronger. To do this, I set up my dado stack at a 1/4 inch in width, 1/4 inch high, and a 1/4 inch away from my fence on my table saw. I then proceeded to cut the groove out the center of the door. I then cut some solid 3/4 inch wide white oak and then removed a 1/4 inch off each side of it. And now with all my parts cut, I can now miter it around the door and then glue and let it dry for a couple of hours. And then once dried, I cleaned it up by giving it a quick sand. So the veneer itself looks nice enough, and it's good enough for the back of the door, but for the front, I want to do something a little bit different. So I went around the shop and grabbed as many offcuts as I could find that are longer than the door. Then cut them down into a bunch of strips just over 1/4 inch in thickness on my table saw. So now that I got a whole bunch of these 1/4 inch thick white oak strips, My plan is to glue them to the front of the door, but before I can do that, I want to rip them down on my table saw to various widths, ranging from 5/8 all the way up to 2 inches. Okay, so now all my strips are cut to various widths. Before I stick them to the front of the door, I want to put a slight round over on all the edges, so that way it gives it a bit of a texture and it doesn't just look like the veneer. Okay, cool, so now that the edges have been rounded over, there's a lot more definition between each one, and you can see the different tones and the different grains a lot more, and I think it's gonna look pretty cool. So now all I'm gonna do is glue it to the face of the door, and I'll probably let it dry overnight. It's the very next day, so this should have dried. So now I can take it out of the very many clamps that I used. So real quick, a bit of a pro tip a wise woodworker once told me. When you're gluing something like this, which is kind of wide and flat, usually you'd get a flat piece of wood and clamp, especially if it's in the middle, you clamp the ends and then think that's okay. But all that's really doing is applying pressure here and here, but it's not applying the downward force in the middle that you need to really glue these pieces together. So what I got told was to use a piece of wood that has a bit of a bow with a low point in the middle like this one. You see that it rocks there? So when I clamp one end and then clamp the other end, it's applying pressure either end, but it's also applying pressure throughout the center as well, which is what you want. So next I can trim the ends flush to the door and then give the frame and the door a really good sand all the way up to 220 grit. So now that it's sanded, I've gone ahead and placed the door back in this frame and it's fitting pretty good. And if it didn't, I would just adjust and sand it accordingly so I get a nice equal gap all the way around. So now I can hinge the door to the frame. Strip it back down, give it a good couple of coats of Osmo oil. And then once that's done, I can add on all the hardware. And then take this beast upstairs and get it installed. And there you have it. I am so happy how this turned out, especially comparing it to the old one. It is way, way better looking, way cleaner, way more modern. Super, super happy. Now I want to hear your opinion on this door in the comments down below. So next we're going to be making a start on the handrail and the staircase. So if you enjoyed this video and you want to see what we do there, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys in the next one. Yo! Oh. Cut my fucking nipple off.